About 25% of African countries achieved growth rates of 7% or higher in 2014, which has created enthusiasm for Africa in attaining major development goals.
It's clear to everybody that Africa has this, great growth story, that growth has been high and commendable and even enviable from other countries that are not growing. But the reality is that this growth has not really dealt with high levels of poverty in the continent. So this is the story that is there for the ordinary person. They have a hard time understanding why we can say that the African countries are growing when at the same time they don't feel it. The ordinary man or woman on the street feels that this growth you're talking about, I don't feel it because my income hasn't risen. The young person says, but I cannot find jobs. I'm still with my degrees, I don't have jobs. And then you have other kinds of issues that are related to that.
This growth, which was mainly driven by high commodity prices and exports of natural resources, was not fully felt in key sectors which employ the bulk of the population.
Agriculture employs 60% of Africa's labor force, 80% of the poor. And yields, agricultural yields, the productivity of the land, Africa's hugely rich continent in land, can be very productive. But those agricultural yields are still low. And that's a result of a lot of different things. It's lower use of modern inputs like fertilizers, lower use of mechanization and capital, irrigation that's good in some places but less good in others, and even the skills of farmers and the ability to know which crops to adopt, which techniques to use, which are often addressed by extension agents. So there's a range, a plethora of causes that in many cases are being addressed by government, but much more can be done.
To mitigate this, experts say that turnaround strategies need to be established in the agricultural sector and further cascade this to other sectors.
We need to also improve access to markets and services for the rural smallholder farmers. I think that is one of the key issues which came out of the discussion today, is that access to services, infrastructure, roads, power, telecommunications, finance, are very, very important, together with technology in terms of improving productivity of agriculture. But at the same time also we need to invest in enhancing access to services for the informal sector.
Africa has been rising for 20 years now. There's been a lot of growth, but yes, that growth hasn't always, in some cases it has, but in most cases it hasn't included the bulk of Africa's people as much. The rate at which poverty has been falling has been much less than in South Asia or East Asia, for example. So Africa can do a lot better. We think of it in two ways. First, promote more growth where the poor people are. That goes back to agriculture. But the other thing, which I talked less about, is harness the growth in the sectors that are producing a lot of growth, like extractives, like mining and oil and gas and so on. Harness that growth and help transfer some of it to poor people, even through cash transfers that are widely used in other countries.
For instance, in Kenya, the government has installed key policies to ensure that inclusive economic growth is spread to the grassroots.
In terms of inclusive growth, some of the initiatives being taken by government, one is the issue of making sure when we have job creation, it goes to where the jobs are being created. For example, you can see like when the government is talking of the standard railway, jobs are going to be given in local communities, whatever form. So if it's investments in road construction, jobs are given in those local areas, the local communities. The other thing that the government is trying to do is public procurement. I'm not a government spokesman, but in terms of public procurement, now there is a mandatory requirement to set 30% of procurement to the youth, women, and persons with disability.
After all is said and done, sound leadership coupled with economic diversification will go a long way to ensure the robust growth the continent has experienced will translate to significant poverty reduction and better opportunities for all.
If you look at the countries that are doing very well, the one thing that you can easily see is that they have either a good leader or good leaders that have really, not only set the vision, but also make sure that their plans and strategies are implemented. And so leadership is extremely important, but it's not just at the country level alone. It's leadership at all levels, because it goes beyond just who is leading the country. It goes also who is leading the private sector organizations, who are leading the civil society organizations, who are leading the subnational governments, whether it's at the local governments or the provincial governments, and so on and so forth. So leadership capacity is extremely important, because without that, you don't have the right policies made, and even if you make them, they are not implemented, and there is no accountability.
So government leadership and also private-public partnerships and encouraging also private sector investment, especially in small and medium enterprises, is crucial. And I think the sources of growth, as I said, in Africa the last few years, higher growth has been largely driven by the commodity sectors. That means, like, Africa is exporting raw materials like oil and gas and minerals. That has driven growth, but it wasn't broad enough. So we need to be talking about diversifying the growth and also bringing a lot of investment into these sectors which are pro-poor, and which could create opportunities for greater engagement of the youth and those who graduate out of universities, investing also in enhancing skills.